Matthew Tkachuk has been suspended for the fourth time in his NHL career. Now, before I say anything else, just understand that I will be a little bit biased against Tkachuk. Personally, he is one of my least favorite players, and in fact, he's arguably in the top 5 for the players I dislike the most. So yeah, I will be a bit harsh on him, but there's more to talk about than just the suspension. For those who may be a little bit confused, Matthew Tkachuk got suspended once again for doing what he does best, which is agitating. The Panthers were down 5-4 in the last minute or so in the third period against Los Angeles Kings on Saturday when Kings goalie Jonathan Quick made a wonderful save against Braden Montour of the Panthers. While he was holding the puck trying to get back up on his feet, Tkachuk sneakily pokes the blade of the stick into Quick's cage, obviously aiming to poke him in the eye, which is just nasty and unsportsmanlike, but he unfortunately gets what he wants and Quick goes down. At first, literally nobody notices how Tkachuk is the perpetrator. They just saw Quick on the ground and tried to aid him and see what happened, but the next face-off is where things completely change. With like 10 seconds left in the game, Quick makes one last save on Sam Reinhart and then goes after Tkachuk, which obviously is expected. I mean, anyone who has to deal with a guy like that is going to get mad, which is why Quick reacted that way. And let's be fair, Quick isn't the guy who gets fazed by these things. I mean, he's a pretty focused and vigilant guy who rarely gets thrown off by antics. But just trying to injure him threw him off, and he tries to tackle Tkachuk, which results in a massive scrum. If you watch the video, you will see Brendan Lemieux hilariously screaming at Tkachuk, who's sent off to the locker room, but nonetheless, this just adds to the antics that Tkachuk has been part of, and now he's suspended for 2 games and has given up $100K in salary. Speaking of his salary and stuff, let's go a little bit back in time to the summer where we first heard about Matthew Tkachuk going to Florida in arguably the biggest trade of the year and maybe in recent time. I think he knew he was getting traded to Florida because he signed a whopping 8-year, $76 million contract just minutes before getting traded, and so it clearly just shows how Florida desperately wanted Tkachuk and only Tkachuk. They didn't want anyone else. They really wanted Matthew Tkachuk to play his prime years in Florida. Tkachuk didn't necessarily want Florida back specifically. He was apparently into tons of other teams at the time, which were like Dallas, Nashville, St. Louis, a lot of those central-oriented teams in the United States. He just didn't want Calgary, as we saw him reject that allegedly long-term extension, which I think was above $10.5 million in AAV, and he also rejected the captaincy with Calgary, so he just wanted to come to the United States for sure. And then when we saw who he got traded for, everyone was thinking, wow, maybe Tkachuk really is that good. Bill Zito did a great job during the deadline getting star talent last year, and now that a lot of those players on that team are gone, Giroux, Thornton, Sherratt, maybe getting Tkachuk is the guy they really need, and considering that they had to give away another 100-point scorer in Jonathan Huberdeau and maybe a great defenseman in Mackenzie Weegar, a prospect and a lottery-protected first-round pick, maybe Zito believes that Tkachuk is a bona fide top 10 player in the league and he's going to become that in Florida. I mean, Zito himself said that Tkachuk is a generational talent, word for word. But I will say this, despite him being the leader in points for the Panthers, I think he has like 17 points in 12 games or something like that, he has not been the Tkachuk that we saw last year. He leads the Panthers with 30 penalty minutes. The second highest would be 18, and it's by Radko Gudas, a guy who does not play the same role as Tkachuk. He's more of a grinder/enforcer compared to Tkachuk, who plays like a really talented power forward. This isn't good for Tkachuk considering 1, it puts his entire team at risk by being shorthanded, and 2, it limits his time on the ice to potentially be putting points up on the board. So he's really just putting his entire team at risk, and the way he's going, he's either going to have a disconnect with management once again, or he's going to want out again, or he's going to be such a liability because of that contract that the fans start hating him. There is no upside to his situation right now unless he starts playing clean. A guy in the same division as him in Boston wearing number 63 named Brad Marchand used to be the same way. But do you know what the difference between Tkachuk and Marchand is? Marchand had amassed on average nearly 70 to 80 penalty minutes a year while putting up over 60 points every season. The last time he was below 60 points was the 2014-15 season, which means that he was above 60 points in the COVID-shortened season. He was above 60 points when he was injured for 14 games back in 17-18. He can be a brat, I know, but he's still an offensive threat for the Bruins. And Tkachuk, he was great for Calgary, don't get me wrong. He was putting up great numbers, but he amassed so many penalties that he was only a point-per-game player once in his entire career. Marchand has been a point-per-game player even before Tkachuk got drafted. We do occasionally see Marchand get, feisty or dirty here and there, but he's more focused on being an offensive powerhouse for the Bruins. I think that's what seriously got him the credit that he's deserved as a top player in the league, but we cannot say the same for Matthew Tkachuk. First of all, one season does not make you a top 10 forward. He needs more consistency, as last year was the first time he's ever been above a point-per-game rate, which cannot logically help his argument of being a top player in the league. I will say this though, he was one of 8 players last year who had more than 100 points. We have not seen a season where 8 or more players have gotten 100 points since the 1995-1996 season where Gretzky and Lemieux dominating the league was still a thing, so that gives an argument as to maybe why he'll become a top player in the league very, very soon. But again, as of right now, no, he's nowhere near it. If he can replicate what he did last year or hopefully improve it or maybe come close to it, then yeah, maybe getting him pays off, but I don't ever see Florida winning this trade when you put Huberdeau, Weegar, a prospect, and a first-round pick that is lottery protected all together in exchange for Matthew Tkachuk. Huberdeau is already a 100-point player, and I know he's slow this year, but he's going to come back with full force. Weegar is easily one of the most underrated defensemen in the league, and so that's way more valuable than Tkachuk for sure. So I already see Florida winning this. We're not even getting to the fact that they got a first-round prospect and a first-round pick. But going back to the Tkachuk thing, I mean, how the heck is this a 2-game suspension? If I was the head of the Department of Safety, I'm giving Tkachuk 5+ games. First of all, he's trying to put a Kings team who was just the better team that day at risk by injuring a player who was playing lights out. The eye is a very sensitive part of the body, and if God forbid something worse happened, Quick could have been done for good. Second, he needs to have some sportsmanship, man. You don't just go around poking people in the eye. He's been a salty guy, and he just knows better than that. He's already been suspended 3 other times, and he's just day by day becoming the real public enemy number 1. We already have seen beef between Tkachuk and the Kings when he was with Calgary. We saw him and Doughty go at it almost every single time they played, and soon there will be some other guy pretty much going after him every single night. Being an agitator is not illegal, it's morally wrong, but let's be honest, nobody will be nice to the other team. They all want one thing, which is the cup, and in order to win the cup, you need to win. Tkachuk obviously poked him so that he can get Cal Peterson in the game unprepared and unwarmed up. It's not like Tkachuk has anything personally against Jonathan Quick. He just tried doing anything to get Florida an advantage somehow, and not only did it not work, as Quick made a gorgeous save on Reinhart like right after, but it got him suspended and fined, and Florida has to play one more game against the Hurricanes, a good team without one of their best forwards. A lot of people on Twitter and elsewhere have already started calling him the most dirtiest player in the league, and that's a lot considering that's worse than guys like, Wilson, Kadri, Lemieux, Marchand, Perry, you get the point. But either way, let me know in the comments what you guys think about the Tkachuk trade or the Tkachuk suspension. Do you guys think he's the dirtiest player in the NHL after this whole altercation with the Kings? Let me know, but otherwise, thank you guys for tuning in and have a wonderful day.